How you
Hello,
doing?
audience. This is episode 10 of the Brand Spotlight. We'll be talking to Eric Feinstein, a genealogist. He runs a company called Remember Sambor, all about genealogy, which
Yep.
we will dive into in a minute. First, I want to welcome. We are streamed live on LinkedIn Live. We're streamed on Facebook Live and on YouTube, all through the channel The Brand Spotlight. After the replays are available on all those platforms, and then we repurpose as an audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Joe.
Awesome. And before we get started with the interview, I do want to mention the sponsor of the show. That's the agency I've been building up over the last several years. It's we focus specifically on marketing campaigns for brands. We custom tailor marketing campaigns, and we work very much so it's in line with the general brand strategy. And this show has actually been an outgrowth of the work I've been doing on the agency side of things. Without further ado, welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Joe. Happy to be here.
Sure. So I'll give a little bit of background. Those following on social media, I've actually mentioned Eric did extensive work for extended family of mine that I did not know existed. Essentially, he was commissioned to put out a coffee table book that was the end product, featuring a lot of genealogical research. So we're able to see a lot of my family's history and a lot of long lost cousins. So that was very, very interesting. And then I started following him on social media. And over the last several years, we've actually got to know each other and have been really impressed by Eric's work. So I will start by just asking the one question I generally ask my interviewees is if you could describe your brand in a sentence or two, how would you do that?
So Remember Sambor, it was something related to my grandmother. She had relatives who lived in the town of Sambor in Poland. And she wanted to keep them. They died in the Holocaust, but she wanted to keep their memory alive. So she put their names in her phone book. And when I saw the names, they had no phone numbers attached to it. I said, "Grandma, maybe this is a mistake." She said, "No, I always want to remember Sambor." So I think that the Remember Sambor as a genealogy business, people want to know where they're from, where their family was, what their family did. And so I think Remember Sambor, somehow that encapsulates for me the research and the love that goes into it.
So you've really explained the name and why you chose the brand name Remember Sambor, and you've alluded to what your brand actually does, that genealogical research. Before I came across you, I maybe heard the word genealogist. I've definitely heard genealogy. I know there's websites that you can match and find relatives. But could you take us a little bit more on and explain to us what that entails, more on the what your brand actually does, on what you do?
So genealogy, it's obviously it comes from the word of genes, looking into people's their past, so to speak. So it has many different avenues. So one of them is DNA, which is very popular, obviously with crime shows and other stuff, and actually not only crime shows but real crimes. So tracking people's ancestry through their DNA. So that's one hand, genealogy. I really don't do that. I have clients who've done genealogy that way in terms of gene research, but my genealogy is on the sort of the flip side, is finding a paper trail. So whether that be birth, marriage, death records, cemetery records, census records, even business records, military records, whatever it is, finding some sort of paper trail to make a bridge into people's past, wherever that may find you.
So that's interesting, as we're inundated actually by a lot of these companies that actually will do the DNA research and try to match you up that way, and you're taking a different approach, more
Right.
finding the paper trail. Is that because you like that approach better? It complements the other approach. What's your specific niche in the marketplace?
I really feel like this. People don't even realize there's so many things that documented people's lives in the past. So for me, I did it because I enjoyed it so much. I mean, I think the first time I did it, sort of even as an amateur, there was someone in Ukraine who told me that I think your ancestors had there's an 1876 marriage record when they got married. So I said, so I paid him $25 for the record. When I got it in the mail, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it had their names, had the parents' names, had their addresses. I think there was occupations also. And I said, I couldn't believe in such a thing existed. So once that sort of opened my eyes to this sort of documentary and archival research that's out there. A lot of times when people do DNA research, by contrast, so very quickly through DNA, so you can see you're related 10,000 years ago to these 100 million people. So I don't know. I think it's so grandiose and it's so all encompassing that I think people lose their individuality in the process by going through the step by step, generation by generation, linking the generations with documents. I think it makes it much more personable and people connect to it a lot more. You may have 60,000 10th cousins, but I think it's just beyond most people in terms of the DNA.
So if I'm listening to you, I'm hearing that it's not just about matching your DNA with a bunch of people. It's much more about connecting to aspects of the past, aspects of your ancestry in a very individualistic way.
Right. Absolutely.
Cool. That's fascinating. Can you describe where that drive is, what that drive is? There is an aspect of actually moving forward, progressing, not going back to the past. Where do you see that importance of connecting to the past?
I've thought about this a lot, and definitely in terms of dealing with individual clients, and I find especially I think it fills a need in people. Maybe it's they might have had a personal loss, or they just they grew up without knowing much about their past or their family, and I think it serves as a vehicle to give them a sense of who they are and where they come from. And I think everyone wants to progress in life, but unless it's unless you know where you come from. I think knowing where you come from helps you end up where you're going. Put it that way.
Who you are and where you come from. That seems to be the slogan. Right. That's fascinating, and that whole idea and the fact that people are looking and interested in this whole concept. Now I just want to go a little bit more to your origin story, and we'll move back and forth.
Okay.
And actually, before that, I'll ask, what specific do you have specific product categories and services that you offer? How would you define that? Or is it very much a boutique basis? A client has a specific need and you fill it.
Put it this way. Genealogy, I think, is a lot like music. You can play one note, or you can play a symphony. So, I've had clients come to me, I'm looking for XYZ. I had a client come to me. She was looking for a marriage record of her ancestors in Louisiana. And she looked everywhere for them. It just didn't exist. And then I looked into it for her. And I found out that the courthouse in that parish in Louisiana, that's like a district or a county in Louisiana, had burned down in like 1915. And all the records were destroyed. So the marriage record she was looking for, it did not exist. On the other hand, it turned out there was a librarian in that county who had gone through all the newspapers of like the past 80 years and meticulously written down, like gone through all the wedding and birth notices that were in the newspapers. And she had basically reproduced all the records that were lost. So I was able for this woman to find this thing, but it wasn't an avenue that she ever would have gone on. She couldn't believe it even existed. I mean, I had contacted the local historical society just to even find out what happened. When I told them, they said, well, don't worry. Even though the records are lost, they've been found. So, so that's what, people come to me with like sometimes one question. On the other hand, some people just, I want to know everything, just keep researching. My family, my wife's family, if there's research in Europe, whatever it is, they just, whatever I'm going to find, they cherish. So it really is client-based. Some people could be looking, they're adopted. They want to find out their birth parents. They want to find, I know I had these cousins who lived in Zimbabwe or whatever it is. Some people come with a laundry list of stuff they want. Other people, whatever you find is good for them. So it really is client based. And I actually, that's part of my intake process when I speak with people. I ask them what are you looking for. Some people say, you know what, I know my mother's family. My cousin did all the genealogy, but I know nothing about my father. He didn't even grow up with us. So, please, anything you can find. So it really, it really, there's no one size and one shoe fits all.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And that story with that Louisiana, with that record in Louisiana, that's a fascinating story.
Right.
A
I
little bit
I
back.
love old newspapers. People don't even realize, the treasures that are in them.
I guess if I'm ever looking for an old newspaper, I should call you. I just want to go back to the origin story. I know you alluded to a certain record that you found very early on, and you were just fascinated that you could even find such a thing.
Right.
How did your passion, obsession, business, how did it really? What were one of those one or two things that got you started in that?
Well, when I first moved to New York, I lived with my grandparents. It was sort of like free rent. They lived near a train, and it was easy to get to Manhattan. I said, well, I'm not from New York. I didn't know New York at all, so I said, you know what, I'll just live here for a few months and see how it goes. And that's what happened. But when you visit someone, it's completely different than when you live with someone. So when I lived with my grandparents, I actually saw my grandmother. She had this. Her mother was the oldest of 9 children. So she was the oldest of all the cousins. Out of 9 children, you can imagine there's a lot of cousins. So she had a phone book, and she would call all her first cousins every 2 weeks. So literally, she was on. She was invited to all the weddings and the bar mitzvahs and whatever it was, because she really made herself part of everyone's life. And everyone knew cousin Madeline, but I knew none of these people. So, and my grandmother, to assist her in remembering everything, because she was in touch with everyone, but she just to write down all the names and dates. So she had a family tree which she kept underneath her phone book. So I looked at it once and I said, gosh, Grandma, I don't even know all these people. So every Sunday, I started visiting people. I was going all over New York, New Jersey, whatever it is, Connecticut. I visited tons of people who I'd heard their names, but I never met them. And it was really exciting for me just to, it's one thing you see names in a family tree, and that's nice. But actually, I went out to Southbury, Connecticut, Toms River, New Jersey, before it was a Jewish place. I just visited tons of people, tons of places. Now when I'm with my wife and kids, they're like, how do you know? So, how do you know this place? So, well, if you ever driven someplace before there was a GPS, you never forget it. It's like, oh yeah, I was lost 3 times trying to get to this exit. Yeah, I remember this. I'll never forget it. So, just having driven across all over New York, visiting these people is an experience in and of itself. So that really, interested me. It was the meeting the real people. That was exciting. Everyone has, they had their own story. They do something different. Because they're all cousins, they had, different sides that we weren't related to. You hear all the stories. People, they would give me, every time I would visit, people would give me old pictures. Not that I wasn't interested in some, but they say, "Oh, here, take these pictures of my parents, my grandparents. I'll photograph you my kasuba or whatever." I had a whole file of tons of interesting stuff. All random, that people gave me. They literally sometimes people took pictures off the wall. "Oh, I have another copy of this. You take one." And I just, when I was sort of done with my grandmother's side, I said, well, let me do my father's side. And it sort of snowballed from there. When I got married to my wife's family, and eventually people started to, they saw what I was doing, and I was just doing it for fun. I just enjoyed it so much. And people started hiring me. So that's a bit of the, how a hobby becomes a business.
Interesting. What I did hear that I didn't hear from the earlier parts of the interview. The earlier parts of the interview was focused on a little bit connecting with the past, seeing where you came from, finding those records.
Right.
I see that it was a lot more than that. It was an interest in actually connecting with the actual families.
Yeah. No, that's exciting, and that's really something that's continued, because I made those efforts, over a multi-year span. Recently, I think we were at a wedding. It was like a second wedding. There was a wedding during COVID with like 10 people, and we were invited. And then they had a second wedding, reception after COVID was over. And we're sitting at a table. There was a cousins table, and everyone was first cousins. And they asked, "How are you related?" I said, "Well, I'm actually a third cousin." And they were all looking at me like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "But we become friends with our cousins." because I made that effort. I reached out to them, and also with their kids, and invited them. When my son had a bar mitzvah, we invited them, and it was just that type of personal connection was what I thrive on. So
Yeah, I mean, thanks to you, I've actually had some contact with distant cousins. So thank you for that.
my pleasure. I love it.
Yeah, that's so cool. So now that we really focused on the brand mission of your business, both in terms of connecting to the past in a very individualistic way, the records really paint a more complete picture. You see when they got married, where they got married, where they were buried, aspects of their lifestyle, or anything that was important enough to be documented.
And a lot of times, people have forgotten about this. I was speaking to a client this morning, and she mentioned her grandfather passed away. I'm sorry, her grandfather passed away in a certain year. She didn't realize that her great grandmother passed away the same year. It was, she said, I didn't even know that. Is that possible? I said, well, we have the dates here. Look, they both look like 1970. So, often, I guess it happens with every family. A lot of times you say, well, I'm close to my father's family, my mother's family. So one shoe somehow doesn't get worn as much as the other shoe. So you just, for whatever reason, people tend to gravitate to one side of the family, whatever it is. It's not a judgment call, but then several generations later, you say, well, my parents were never friendly with ex-cousins, so we really don't know them well. I have no idea where they were from, and I think that's what spurs a lot of people's interest. Is like, gosh, well, I'd rather find out. If I do the research now, my kids will have it forever.
Wow. Now I do want to take a little bit of break and show a little bit of a completed research project that you've actually done. I came prepared. Okay. I borrowed this from my parents, actually.
Okay.
So this is actually a beautiful book. It's a full coffee table book. I don't know how to use this camera yet, and I'll try to flip through it in a way you can get a feeling for it. But it's just all about my family's research, where they're from, my grandmother. There's graves. This massive chart that I'm somewhere over there. If I was able
on the bottom right over there.
Right. So somewhere over there. Well, you seem to know my family. So these are the family trees, and then actual stories about the family. You were able. Oh, this picture. I don't know if you can see it right there.
Yeah, one of my favorite. This is. I'll just tell the story quickly. So, this was a family who went to Eretz Yisrael or Palestine in the 1920s. It was a married couple. I think they had 8 children, and the father passed away, I think, a year or 2 after they came to Israel. This is Jacob Statmauer. And I asked all I was speaking to many of his descendants. Out of 8 children, there are many descendants. So I asked everyone, are there any pictures of him? They said, no, he was a religious Jew. They don't believe in photography. There was no pictures of him. So everyone, I was just doing the due diligence, speak to everyone in the family who I was reaching out to. By the way, we're talking. You tell me who your children are, whatever, your wife, etc., family. And then I would say, by the way, do you have a picture of Jacob Statmauer? And everyone said no, until the last person I spoke to. I forget it was. I don't even remember who it was, but it was an older gentleman. And I said, by the way, do you have a picture of Jacob Statmauer? He said, of course, it's right here in my wall. I couldn't believe it. And he said, everyone has this picture. And I thought to myself, sir, nobody has this picture. And it was this picture. It was taken in the port of Haifa the day they arrived, and you can see the ship in the background. I think that's what you can see the little bars of the whatever they call that, the railings, the ship, and I guess maybe not many copies are made of the photograph, but this person had it on his wall, and we really had to. It went to great lengths because he was like, "Well, how do I make copies of it?" And so just to get him, take it off the wall, bring it to like a FedEx or Kinko's or whatever it was, and then because we promised them, take it someplace where they're going to take it out, but then they're going to put it all back together. That's what he was very concerned about. I said, take it to a more high-end place than a low-end place. Who is people, and they did. They put it back together for him, and he was able to send us a scanned copy of the photograph of the book. And then I shared that with as many people as possible.
Yeah, well, we got it, and it's really my grandmother's grandfather.
Yeah.
Her father was Jacob's son, and he moved to Israel earlier.
Right.
And then that picture is actually them greeting the family. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So that's I just wanted to show the audience a tangible, and this is also an audio. This is also going to be restreamed as an audio podcast. So it's just a beautiful coffee table book full of pictures, any pictures really that you're able to find, and the history and how you found the pictures. And really, it paints a complete picture of a family that we don't know much about. My grandmother was born in Israel. Her father was part of this prominent family from Poland. A certain branch went to New York. We barely knew there existed, and my grandmother's family was in Israel. And there's just not, when there's so much movement, there's just not so many records. Yeah, so I actually discovered you about I think about the time, a little bit after my grandmother passed away. She lived till 93. She had a long life. So it was and I remember telling her we reconnected and we met we heard about the Stat Maras, and she got so excited.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, because it was just so distant. They ended up moving to California. So from Israel, so they did a stop in New York, they reconnected with their cousins, but then they kind of lost contact.
Right.
So that's very interesting. Now I want to go a little bit back to your bringing genealogy to market. So we spoke a lot about what you actually do. I even showed a physical copy, but it's not just the physical copy. That's what some customers might want. Some might just want the research, might want the pictures.
Correct.
Now, like I mentioned before, how you brought this to market. If I didn't come across you, I wouldn't know that there was such a thing as a person who does this.
Correct.
So how did you bring to market? And then I know a little bit of your story. How did you? I guess we'll go to the transition from hobby to side gig to eventually a full-time business.
So a lot of when you say bring it to market, I guess it's finding clients. It's branding yourself in terms of pricing, and so a lot of that is done the old-fashioned way, trial and error. Working for people for free, and then realizing that listen, I spent 50 hours on this, and that was my time, and what would 50 hours be worth in the open market. So a lot of it, and the same thing with the branding. It's did I want to have my name, or is are you going to call yourself I'm a piece of bread with some pastrami and Russian dressing, or are you a Reuben? So a Reuben sounds much better than a description of 2 slices of bread, sauerkraut, and Russian dressing and meat. So to find that whatever it is, it's like a hook to hang your head on. That was a whole process. I think we came up with different names, or just I don't know, the Remember Sambor. That was sort of a mantra that was in my head. So I told my wife, and Remember Sambor Genealogy. She thought, well, it sounds too long. So I said, how about just Remember Sambor? That people, a lot of our referrals, or a lot of the way I get business is word of mouth anyway. So people are coming to me. They know I'm a genealogist. So that sort of half is taken care of. I'd say almost every client tells another client, and people, or tells a relative or whatever. And the other people are like, well, I'm not really interested in your branch, but I was interested in this. We have these cousins with the Rhode Island. I want to know about them. So, in that way, a lot of the people who come to me already know about genealogy, or know that I'm a genealogist. But having the name, I think, it sticks in a different way.
Now, when you started doing this, and maybe even started going into business, did you know that other genealogists existed? Do you use same methods, similar methods? Is there something unique about what you're doing? How do you fit into the general genealogy marketplace?
Well, I mean, I definitely know other genealogists exist, because I use them as subcontractors. If I had a client who a Jewish family, they moved to Sarajevo and some other cities in Bosnia, or like around 1900. They eventually came to America, but they want to know all about their Bosnian stay. So, I don't speak Bosnian or Serbo-Croatian, etc. So, how are you going to cross a bridge like that? So you find someone local who will be trustworthy to get documents and work with them. And I even have people in the United States. One person, no one can do it all. So if I need someone to go to a courthouse in Detroit, you need to have someone who can help you with that. So I do as much as I can, but I'm also, a lot of it is being a quarterback, and distributing, or being a port guard in the sports analogy, distributing to who needs to be doing what, and bringing it all together. So, as I need to understand the genealogy on my side, but I also need to have partners, so to speak.
So it sounds like there are different experts in different parts of genealogy, or even not
Absolutely.
experts. Some just locally they know, and I would assume you are specific to generally. I guess you would probably know when to hire a genealogist, or when it's just you're just
Correct.
hiring someone to get a courier for a court record.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
it's really based on client need. Like if there's XYZ records, and there's tons of stuff that has been digitized that we can look online and find stuff. On the other hand, there's just the amount of paper that's out there that is not online. It's beyond. Maybe they will digitize everything someday, and we'll all be like on one small flash drive. But until then, it's good to have friends everywhere. So, and also the one of the good things about genealogy, or working with other genealogists, is that everyone sees things in a different light. So it's almost like having a second opinion, or having a partner in business or partner in life, that you may have. I have my way of seeing things, but someone else is like, well, wait a minute, turn that picture upside down. Here's how we should be looking at the situation. And so having all these, it really adds to the total project and the value that I bring, that I have all these relationships. So it's not even just all my expertise, but the expertise of maybe 30, 40 people behind me.
oh wow, how did you build that up? Is it just a slow process over the years,
Yeah,
or
absolutely. Basically through the different clients that I've had. I mean, I'll just give an example. I had one. It was someone I was working with in Warsaw. I asked them to do work for a project I was working on. They went to an archive, and I wanted some records for this specific client. So they came back to me. They said, "Yeah, we found some. There are definitely some records for your client, and here's the address of the archive. You can write them yourself and get it." And I thought to myself, no, this I can't work with these people. So the people I work with now, they would have photocopied it or photographed it and said, "Here, Eric, and here's a translation, so your client can connect X, which is written on this page. It's written in maybe 19th century Russian, which is different than the Russian we have today, because there was a spelling change of the Russian Revolution. They eliminated a lot of letters that were useless. So there's different levels of working with people, and the actually people I ended up working with. I'll give an example. There was a website where is a wealthy person in Chicago. He's not here anymore, but he had paid for all the 85,000 tombstones in the Warsaw Jewish Cemetery to be digitized and transcribed. So all photographed, and all the tombstone inscriptions transcribed, so anyone could sort of access them. So great, wonderful. So we found the graves of one of my client's ancestors, but unfortunately it was an old grave and had sunken into the earth, and just the name at the top was visible. And my client was like, "Well, what about the Hebrew name and the art site?" I said, "Well, we're sort of stuck here." So I told the person in Warsaw, and she was like, "No, don't worry."
just to interrupt you for a second,
Yeah.
a yard site is the date.
Oh, so the
It's just
day
to
when
give,
someone passed away. Apologize. So you can't see, and it will have in Hebrew. Oftentimes in Jewish graves, it mention the date in Hebrew when someone passed away. So that oftentimes people will mark that date as an important date on the Hebrew calendar. So I mean, but basically there was a name, but there weren't any of the dates and other things that you see in a tombstone. It was the grave had sunken into the earth. It was just one of the vagaries of life, so to speak. So this genealogist in Warsaw said, "Eric, it's February now. Not much we can do, but in May and June, the ground's going to be awfully pliable, and we'll go pay the gardener, and he'll dig the whole thing out and dust it off, so to speak." And that's what we did, and we got a full shot with
That's a cool story, and it's
Yeah,
also
it was really it's beyond just the documents and the pages and so on and so forth. It's thinking about something globally, and that's that years of experience. That's what I bring to the table.
so it's really about finding the creative ways, that sort of non-traditional ways that people wouldn't necessarily think of. They could even be simple in front of our faces, but like I guess after years of experience, we can
Right.
do this and this and this and this.
I mean, usually someone has already Googled their last name, so for me to do that is not helpful. But other ways, that I just know from my experience, when people come to me with X, Y, and Z project, I say, oh, this here's a few. I once I start talking to clients, usually the ideas start germinating. Okay, I feel like here are some options we have. Here's some good things to look at. Obviously there's newspapers, and I speak. I went to college for Russian. I lived in France and Germany. I lived in Israel. So just the amount of languages in the newspapers that are available to me, that I look at in my spare time, also for clients, is considerable. So I think that that brings things to the table that you can't Google, so to speak.
Do you find the fact that that more records are being digitized, does that make it, is that a competition, so to speak, to your job, or only makes it easier and helps you build a more complete picture?
I think it's easier. I think put it this way: there's a big Jewish cemetery in Berlin called the Weissensee Cemetery. I think there's about 200,000 people buried there, and they've refused to digitize the list. If you want, you can write a letter to them, and they'll tell you if there's any information but you have to prompt them. So I wrote them a letter. I said, it's great that you have all the information and wonderful, but Berlin was such a crossroads of humanity before World War II. Just to give an example, this great grandmother of mine, the mother, she was one of the oldest of the 9 children on my grandmother's side. So she was sick at one point in her life. This is before 1910. And her mother took her from New York to Berlin for medical treatment because, it was in Berlin. It's almost like taking the space shuttle now to get medical treatment. but the fact that they would come from New York to Berlin for medical treatment just shows you that, the amount of people who are probably buried in the Jewish cemetery in Berlin from all over, not only Germany, but people came from Russia and Poland or whoever for medical treatment. And unfortunately, probably, maybe died there. So, so I told these people, I said, the fact that you keep it under lock and key probably prevents a lot of research, because people do research and say, well, see, I told you I'd find nothing. There's nothing to find. So because, there's so much that's hidden that, if things would open up, I think if there's more stuff to find, the interest will grow. But if people constantly just, all they find is brick walls, well, yeah, I told you there's nothing to find anyway. So I think that, more interest, success breeds success. So more interest would bring more general interest in the field. I definitely believe that.
Interesting. More interest in the field, and more of that white glove service that you provide people would be interested in.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. That's fascinating. Did that cemetery relent?
No. They're completely, if people want to, if people, they're like, I was like, well, that's great, but a lot of times genealogy, because their opinion is like, well, if people are related to someone buried here, so they'll contact us. So that would be under normal circumstances, that might seem right. But since it was a Holocaust and like half of European Jewry was killed, so a lot of people just looking for surnames. They say they're looking for Bermans from wherever, so they don't even know where their family lived, or that this uncle might have gone here or there. I'm saying all the stuff that might have been present in their mind, but since all these people were wiped out, so a lot of it was just lost. So that's why I feel like you'd be helping your own cause, but there'd be more people interested in the upkeep of the cemetery. I'm sure people would make more donations. I'm saying, if they knew they had, we have relatives who are buried at X, Y, and Z location, it only makes sense. So yeah, from the historical standpoint, I definitely feel like keeping those doors closed doesn't do them any favors.
Wow. Now I want to get back to the bringing your services to market. Do you find that it's generally people who have an interest in genealogy before they got to know you, or people who knew you did it and they're like, oh, cool, this is a cool new concept that I've never heard of before. Let me see if I can find anything. How do you find that balance?
Right. So I definitely think most of the clients, everyone has like questions, and there's like this one question that everyone wants to know. I've had a client. She didn't know her father. She knew her mother. She knew her father's name, but she knew nothing about him or his family. So she's always been interested to find out, but she didn't want to go on a website. She felt like she wasn't interested in all the she didn't want to find his social security number. She wanted to know more about him or his family, or so she wanted someone to help guide her through it. to be there for her, to, I guess maybe do the research and present her with the results. So I feel like a lot of people, it starts with a question. They have something that's bothered them, maybe their whole life, or maybe recently, or maybe there was an event that happened, or someone passed away, and I was at I was comforting the mourners. I had friends so when I listened to someone else speak about their family, I was like, well, they know so much about their family. I know nothing about mine. How do I find out? So usually the people are coming to me with some sort of question, something they want to know about. And then we, put together how we're going to find the answers.
So it seems like you've become the go-to person for that one-off question, which is essentially which leads to clients. Did I get that correctly?
Yeah, I think that's usually people, they have some sort of question. There's something bothering them, and this is another avenue to for self-help, to put things in perspective.
Are most how do you find the general society? Are most people interested in this? Is it a certain type of person that's interested in this? How do you find that? Are you everybody? Can you be everybody's genealogist, so to speak? Or
No,
is it
listen, it's, I remember hearing someone speaking. He said, not everyone has the blessing of the to have children, but everyone has parents. That's just humanity. Everyone has parents. So we all have a past, so to speak. So, with that in mind, there's too many people. Not one person can't. I can only do so much. Even when I have people help me do the work, it's still there's a saturation point. So I try to do as much as I can, but one person can't be everyone's genealogist.
Got you. But does everybody, when you have the conversations with people, does everybody want a genealogist?
I mean, the people who come to me, absolutely, they're definitely there's some sort of interest. There's something that prompted them to ask the friend, or someone showed them, oh, well, I'm doing this, or look what this guy found for me, and they a lot of times it's, as I said before, that they say, well, I'm not really interested in what you're saying, but I've always had this question. I've always wanted to know X, but I'd like to speak to that guy and see if what he did for you. Could he answer my questions also?
Cool. In the beginning, before you became that go-to person, how did that, I guess if you could take us through how you became that go-to person.
Right. So it was really, working on, one of my first projects was this Statmauer book that you alluded to. They showed the book. So that was literally a 2-year adventure, both doing the research and the art project of putting the book together. Working with people in the family. Originally I was just doing it as a genealogy. Then my wife said, well, what do you just hand them a stack of papers? You have to put a book together. So, I went back to the family. I said, listen, we could do a few. And when they heard about the book, they said, you know what, let's do a book. We love that. That's a great idea. And they had a point person in the family, someone who was retired, who was going to agree to, he knew the whole, from A to B, A to Z. So he was going to be rereading everything, making corrections, making artistic suggestions, whatever it was. It was, so it was a great collaboration. It was good to have someone on the family side, and I was on the research side. So it was a little 2-year process. And because of that book, there were some distant cousins on one side of that Statmauer family that commissioned the second book. And that was also a 2-year project. But in that case, there were 3 people on the family side. It was like two cousins and one of the earlier generation. I forget how she was related, like an aunt. So the 3 of them were copied on all the emails, and they were just, they were doing research at the same time I was. It was like a whole group, it was a lot of fun. And they ended it up, they made a huge family reunion of all the people we found through the book, through the 2 years of the book. And that was one of the things that they came to me. They said, look, my grandfather was writing these people in Israel in 1954. Do you think you can find them? We think they're related. So it was a woman named Irit. And I said, well, probably several things have happened since 1954. Probably either she's passed away, she could have got also remarried, whatever it was. It turned out all of the above had happened. She had passed away. She'd been divorced and remarried. So the name we were looking for wasn't even the name of the letters. But I was able to, she lived in a kibbutz, and I contacted the kibbutz, and they knew the whole story. I photocopy the letters. I said, it's not just like a debt collector looking for someone. This is real family. So they put us in touch with. They said, well, her son lives in Boston. And I said, well, my clients live in New York. I think this is great. And it was a cousin relationship. So he came to the family reunion, and he was just blown away because he said, I came to America and I felt like I have no family here. And so he came out of that party thinking like, my goodness, I have a great family. It was, so that was, anyway, so those type of things, one at a time. And I did it while I was working a day job. I had small kids, and they would go to sleep at 7. So I literally had the whole evening to work, and develop a lot of these tools that have served me, eventually, because the business goes through word of mouth. It's kept going in a good way.
Cool. I'm just going to take a break to read a comment. We got one from a fellow by the name of Pinchas Feinstein. Go, Tot, go.
That's my son.
Nice. So Tot is a Yiddish word for daddy.
Yes.
So thanks, Pinchas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But back to the interview. So that's very interesting. It sounds like that just one thing led to another. You just ended up putting out this masterpiece. Sounds like you did research. These people in this family knew you did it. I know you told me before you had a personal relationship with one of the people who commissioned it.
Yes.
And you were always doing it for work, either as a hobby or for work. And then you commissioned this project, which led to a bunch of other projects, which while you were doing your full-time job, which just, I guess after you do enough projects, you become the go-to person for this.
Yes.
When did you know it was time to say, that's it, go big or go home?
It got to a saturation point in terms of, I showed my wife, I said, really, I could quit my job and just do this full time. So she's like, well, it was also a question, listen, I could work from home doing it. And there were a lot of other factors that sort of went into, being your own boss. And listen, there's a lot more responsibility. You have to pay taxes, and it just, again, I had an accountant who helped me just, arrange everything the correct way. So, and you had to have a business plan. We definitely, I spoke to a lot of people just in terms of, okay, I've been doing this as a sort of a hobby / it has been a side gig, but I want to do it full time. So, also, I'd had a logo for a long time, sort of, I'd say non-professional logo, something. I figured we might have hired someone to do it, but my wife said, we need something different. So we shopped around. We spoke to different people, and then when we actually found someone who we liked and trusted, in terms of the graphic design and the logos, and getting the colors of the website and all the sort of the whole corporate package or corporate branding, we really went back and forth with them in finding the right fit that we felt reflected the whole business. And then, once armed with that, I said, well, God will help us every day to send us a livelihood. So that's really what happened.
Nice. Your logo happens to be very nice. Let me see if I can share it. It's going to take me a minute to get to it. Let me see if I can share it here. I know I can. I just have to find it. Genealogy by Eric. Okay. Here we go. Share screen. Here, so that's just the top of your website.
Yes.
Yeah, and I see there's a little tree there. Remember Sambor
Genealogy, yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that tree and why it sounds like you did put effort into the logo?
Yeah. So there's actually a few sort of whole different logo pieces or whatever. There isn't like one sort of, like Mercedes has the that grill thing, whatever. So we had a few different things for different, because my wife wanted for an app and also for a website. She said, so you're going to have different things. So the tree here, we want something elegant and refined, because to reflect that the hard work that we do, and the excellent results. So the tree genealogy, it's somehow the symbol of genealogy is always something to do with the tree, family tree. I think that's the metaphor. Like ancestry, for example, has a leaf, but it's because it's part of a tree. So we didn't want to do the leaf. We looked at different trees, and it was really different colors. A lot went into even though we found a great graphic designer, really a lot went into the final product. It wasn't like it wasn't a 2-minute sale, put it that way. It's just in terms of even finding the results, and she had to feel what our business was. It was a lot went into it. We were very happy with working with her, but and that was part of putting a brand together, is finding the appropriate colors, and the things that reflect your business. So that's challenging. Look at yellows and reds, and just even that's these aren't things that you think, oh, I'm a genealogist, why should I even think about this stuff? But it's part of the package.
Yeah, it has to really reflect your brand.
Yeah.
You're not just it's not just a commoditized service. It's not just
Right.
a commoditized product.
Right.
It's your brand.
Right. So
What I
that really was, even I had clients during that whole period, but it just, I would say just that whole tumult about finding the right name, the right everything. That was, and then when it came out, it was like, yeah, this is it. We love it.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's a great name. The logos are really nice, very elegant. It really conveys. I know you never use the word white glove, but I'll use the white glove
Okay.
service. Um, you've mentioned that it's not just about searching internet databases, but really finding and presenting that complete picture, and really giving the clients that experience of knowing who they came from, where they came from, with as much context as possible.
Right.
Yeah, that's super cool. So is your team just you, and then you have this massive network, and you're really putting it all together, or are you building an
That's the long
internal
and the short
team?
of it. Yeah.
Got you. So you really focus on putting all the pieces together and really knowing when to ask who, where to ask, etc.
Correct.
Where do your packages start at, if I may ask?
So for just hourly consulting, I charge $100 an hour. If people want a monthly package, it can go up to 2,000 or more. It really depends on what people are looking for. If they want just if it's just research, there's prices. If they want, it's really tailored to the specific client products. If they want book production, the books are just so much more involved, both on just the research side and on the art project side. So it's based on my time. So I said, look, if we're putting a book together, say you want 15, 20 pages a month, if you look at the pages in a book, okay, you have pictures there, but it's the explanation, it's the analysis, it's the putting everything into context. That a lot of it takes time, and sometimes even finding images. I'm making a book for an African American family from Georgia at the moment, and they lived in a place called Waycross, Georgia, which is sort of on the Florida border. And a lot of the business, a lot of the industry these are a lot of pine tree forests in southern Georgia. And a lot of these forests really provided ships masts and other things for the shipping industry in Savannah. They're sort of, they couldn't just, there was no more trees left in Savannah. So they've made ships there for hundreds of years. So they really had to go far afield to find and maintain, have forests and reforest places where they're going to get stuff for the shipping industry. So I don't know, but I learned about this for the project, but turpentine, or basically getting the juice of the trees, was that a lot of that was used in the shipbuilding process. So a lot of my clients' ancestors were in the turpentine business. They would work at turpentine mills and all sorts of, they put the stuff in the trees. They would collect the sap and what. So you want to find images that reflect that. And so I just so happened we found a Library of Congress image, which is free, from 1935, showing a turpentine collector, an African American turpentine collector from Waycross, where my client's family was from. So I showed it to him. I said, "This belongs in the cover of the book." I mean, this is, it's not your ancestor. However, a lot of your family, this is what they were doing for several hundred years. So, it's just finding stuff like that. To first of all, you have to know the book, and you have to be living the book, so to speak, to even to find stuff like that. So, the packages really reflect the time and the effort that goes into it.
Wow, it's really fascinating. Another thing that I liked is that it seems like you really uh, focused mainly on just perfecting your craft over the years, and kind of the business came as an outgrowth of that. Did I
Correct.
get that correctly?
Yeah, and I think that's what people appreciate. They know that I could do anything, but that I love doing this. And I'm very much like, one of the things I tell people, because a lot of people, um, they like, one of the biggest issues in genealogy is people researching the wrong families. I had a client who came to me once. She had a fantastic family tree. Not a Jewish person. She was from Greenwich, Connecticut. And on the one hand, she was descended from all these kings and queens in Europe. And on the other side, she actually felt she had some Jewish relatives. So she wanted me to research her family. So I said, okay. But I said, can I begin? She wanted me to go 50 generations back. I said, you know what? Can I just start, like, do my due diligence to basically double check your research? And she said, "No, okay." She wasn't that excited about it. She really wanted to go, like, back to the first Adam and Eve. So I said, well, they live in Greenwich, Connecticut. Your grandfather was born there. I said, well, yeah, and your great grandparents passed away there. Well, let me get their death records to begin with. And Greenwich, Connecticut is a very wealthy place. It's right outside New York City. It has a lot of mansions, and it's a very, like, Tony suburb, if you can use that word. So it looks like the registrar there had a lot of time, because on the death records, this is like the 1920s and 30s. Not only did they have fields for the where the parents of the person who passed away were from, but they had an extra line, birthplace of parent. And a lot of places I've seen, when they have people filled out, they'll just write unknown, unknown, unknown. Get this form. See, the register was actually meticulous in asking people to fill out every line. And the reason why I know he was meticulous, because some of the villages that came up when we got these records back, I mean, I had to Google them. They weren't. I don't know where this is. So you couldn't just make this stuff up. So he actually had people filling out, the real information. So when he got these records back, I said, well, if these are the records, you can see your grandfather signed these papers. These were his parents. If these are his parents and those are their parents, then your whole family tree is, I don't know where you got it. A lot of people, they'll just see the same last name and they say, my name is Johnson. His name is also Johnson. We must be related. No. So a lot of people, they're looking for records. They're looking for results. They see some random results. They say, well, then we'll make the connection. Like two magnets. Well, they're both magnets, right? But so one of the things I'm always concerned about is that I really want to show my clients. That's why I go generation by generation. I only want to research their family and not anyone else's. So you don't want to go off on some tangent. Oh, sorry, the past 2 months we were researching a family. I just realized, should have made a left turn in Albuquerque. This is not your family. So you want to spend people's time wisely, and that's why I try to get as much documentation as possible to show them we're only researching your family and no one else. I said people appreciate that approach.
Wow,
that's going to copy something from online that they're really going to come to them with excess, more proof than you ever needed to show these are your father's great grandparents or whatever it is.
I see. There's a reason to hire a professional.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I mentioned before, so I actually started a brand spotlight because I have a marketing agency, and I'm consistently talking to brands about how to market themselves. But I love it when I find the brand and that person. So that's basically the story of why I just started doing the brand spotlight. Some people on my team really convinced me to put it online. They said, these are really fun conversations you're having, put them in public. It's actually really fun to have the conversations with the people who are not necessarily looking for marketing, or even if they are, that all the marketing they've done until now has really been just perfecting the craft and becoming that go-to person.
Right.
That go-to person. We usually spend like 20, 30 minutes on all their strategies, and it sounds like for you it happened very, very organically.
Right.
So that's super cool. I think we covered a lot here. I really, really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So just before we wrap up, just want to know if you have any parting thoughts and where we could find you.
No, so I think this is something that could potentially interest everyone. But you did mention earlier. You said, "Is everyone interested?" And so my stock answer is there's usually one in every family. Like not everyone is interested, but there's always one, and everyone knows who it is. So for whatever reason, there's someone usually becomes the family lightning rod, and that it interests them. So not everyone is interested, but the people who are, it becomes them obsession, and they just love it. And so those are usually my clients more than anything. So we're definitely we're on Instagram at Remember Sambor _genealogy. Also at our website is remembersambor.com, or Genealogy by Eric. It's the old name, but I think it's still out there somehow. And I'd love to speak to you.
Cool.
And we'd love to find your family.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Joe. Really, this was exciting.
Awesome. To our audience listening, thank you so much. Anybody who watched it live, we're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and this will be restreamed as an audio podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. Thank you so much. This is episode 10 of the Brand Spotlight.